New words and examples.
Amid. If something is amid something else, then it is in the middle of it.
The bee was busily flying amid the flowers in the garden.
Backstage. If something happens backstage, it occurs behind a theater stage.
After the show, the director went backstage and thanked the actors.
Billionaire. A billionaire is someone who has at least $1 billion.
The sale of his inventions made the inventor a billionaire.
Brute. A brute is someone who behaves or looks like a violent animal.
My older brother can act like a brute when he doesn't get his way.
Clumsy. If someone is clumsy, then they are awkward in handling things.
The businessman was clumsy and dropped his work files.
Collide. To collide with something means to hit into it while moving.
The two cars collided with each other because their drivers were not careful.
Culprit. A culprit is someone who did a crime or other bad deed.
The police were still searching for the culprit from the robbery.
Evacuate. To evacuate means to leave a place of danger to a place of safety.
During the flood, many families were evacuated to higher ground.
Flammable. If something is flammable, then it is able to catch on fire.
Be careful with that blanket near the candle. It is extremely flammable.
Mob. A mob is a large crowd of people that often wants to cause violence.
The copier was destroyed by a mob of angry workers.
Premature. If something is premature, then it is done too early or before the proper time.
Mark's celebration was premature because the ball hadn't fallen in the hole.
Resent. To resent something means to have bad feelings about it.
She resented the fact that she had never been able to play an instrument.
Satire. A satire is a work of art that uses humor and irony to make fun of something.
This book is a satire of what life was like in the army.
Scrutiny. Scrutiny is the careful examination of something.
A scientist should always practice scrutiny with their work.
Segregate. To segregate something means to place it in a group apart from other things.
In gym class, the children were segregated into two groups, boys and girls.
Subject. To subject someone to something means to force them to do or experience it.
The officers subjected everyone to a careful search before they left the plane.
Testify. To testify means to give evidence as a witness.
The judge listened while the victim testified about the robbery.
Tumult. A tumult is a loud and confused noise made by a large crowd of people.
She couldn't hear her friend over the tumult of the other excited guests.
Underestimate. To underestimate something or someone means to think they are not important.
We lost the game because we underestimated the other team's skill.
Uproar. Uproar is loud noise caused by people who are very angry or upset.
The fans made a great uproar when their team lost the game. The Brute and the Billionaire. Hundreds of people had come to see a popular satire, but during the performance, a fire started in the theater. The audience and actors evacuated the building. Luckily, no one was hurt, and the fire was soon put out. Immediately, the audience assembled into an angry mob and demanded to know what had happened. It was soon revealed that the fire had started backstage, and only 2 people were in the area at the time. One was the husband of the play's star actress, the billionaire Henry Rich. The other was the theater's janitor, Bill, a large and strong man who looked like a brute. The crowd segregated the 2 men and demanded to know who the culprit was. Most of the crowd thought that Bill was to blame. They felt that he had started the fire without ever subjecting him to any scrutiny. Bill resented this but said nothing. Luckily, the billionaire's wife testified in his defense. "Your decision is premature," she told the crowd. "I fell down amid the tumult while everyone fled the fire. Bill rescued me and carried me out of the building. I think you underestimate his character. Besides, in order to be close enough to save me, he couldn't have been near the place where the fire began." The crowd then turned their eyes to the billionaire. "He did it!" they shouted. "Make him pay!" "Wait," the billionaire said over the uproar. "I admit that I started the fire, but it was an accident. I was going backstage to see my wife and was clumsy. I collided with a lamp, and it fell to the floor. The floor was flammable. A fire started, and I fled." The mob was surprised. The man they blamed was innocent, and the billionaire was guilty. To pay for his error, the billionaire not only repaired the theater, but had it remade to be better than before.
New words and examples.
Adorn. To adorn something means to make it more beautiful by decorating it.
Small glass beads adorned the vase.
Bliss. Bliss is a state of complete happiness.
Every time he sees his girlfriend, he feels a sense of bliss.
Butler. A butler is the most important male servant in a wealthy house.
Whenever he needed something, he rang a bell and the butler appeared.
Cramp. A cramp is a strong pain caused by a muscle after a lot of physical use.
After the marathon, Jenny got a terrible cramp in her calf muscle.
Dilapidated. When a building is dilapidated, it is old and in bad condition.
Paint peeled off of the old dilapidated apartment building.
Evoke. To evoke a memory or emotion means to make it occur.
The picture evoked memories of when grandmother was a girl.
Farewell. A farewell is an instance of saying goodbye or a way to say it.
She got on the plane after we said our farewells.
Faucet. A faucet is a device that controls the flow of a liquid or gas.
Turn off the faucet when you are done brushing your teeth.
Filth. Filth is a large amount of dirt or dirty things that disgust you.
There was tons of filth and trash on the shore of the river.
Flaw. A flaw is a mistake in something that causes it to be less effective or correct.
We discovered a major flaw in the metal chain.
Grin. To grin means to smile broadly.
That joke makes me grin every time I hear it.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping is the maintenance of a house or an establishment like a hotel.
Housekeeping is not much fun, but it has to be done.
Mound. A mound of something is a large pile of it.
There was a mound of clothes on the messy teenager's floor.
Numb. When a body part is numb, it does not have any feeling.
After holding my hand under the icy water, my fingers went numb.
Reckless. When people are reckless, they act in an unsafe way.
The reckless driver posed a threat to everyone else on the road.
Slate. Slate is a dark gray rock that can easily be split into layers.
The roof of the church was made of slate.
Stool. A stool is a seat with legs but no support for a person's arms and back.
I don't find stools very comfortable to sit on.
Testament. A testament to something shows that it exists or is true.
The beautiful performance was a testament to the singer's natural talents.
Timber. Timber is wood that is used for building houses and making furniture.
Trees in this area are grown specifically to be used for timber.
Valve. A valve is a device attached to a pipe that controls the flow of liquid or air.
The mechanic removed the dirt to clear the engine valve. The butler. Greta was an elderly lady who lived alone in a huge, dilapidated mansion. The mansion was in terrible condition. It was covered with filth, and most of the furniture was broken. Plus, the kitchen sink leaked water all over the floor. Greta was too old to do housekeeping and repairs herself, so she hired a butler named Gordon. Gordon was a young, muscular man. His muscles were a testament to his strong work ethic. He believed that if he worked hard, great things would happen for him. On his first day, he worked for hours cleaning and making repairs. He swept up mounds of dirt. He tightened the valve underneath the kitchen faucet to stop the leak. He even bought timber to build new stools for the kitchen. He worked so hard that his fingers went numb, and he got cramps in his shoulders. Gordon worked hard every day. Even when tasks were boring, he was never reckless. He made sure there were no flaws in his work. Gordon was worried, however, that Greta wasn't pleased. She never expressed thanks or said that he did a good job. The lack of appreciation evoked unhappy feelings in Gordon. He even thought about quitting. But he decided the right thing to do was to keep working hard. One day while Gordon was sweeping, Greta said, "Gordon, I have a surprise for you." He went to Greta's room and saw a beautiful slate statue. It looked just like him. It was adorned with a banner that read, "Welcome home." Greta said, "You've made this ugly old mansion look new again. I'm so thankful for your hard work that I want you to have it. I'll move into a smaller house." He grinned and gave Greta a big hug. He said, "I'm in bliss. My hard work really paid off." The two said their farewells, and Gordon spent the afternoon admiring his beautiful new home.
New words and examples.
Adhere. To adhere means to act in the way that a rule or agreement says is right.
If the new employees wish to succeed, they must adhere to the boss's rules.
Administer. To administer means to take responsibility for organizing something.
The teacher's assistant will administer the test.
Compassionate. When people are compassionate, they feel pity and sympathy for others.
The compassionate nurse tried to make the sick man feel comfortable.
Contaminate. To contaminate something means to put dirty or harmful chemicals into it.
The lake was contaminated when pollutants entered into the water.
Deficiency. A deficiency is a lack of something, especially something that is needed.
Your snack has a deficiency of any real nutrients.
Epidemic. An epidemic is an outbreak of a disease that spreads quickly.
It was difficult to stop the flu epidemic.
Hazard. A hazard is something that could be dangerous to a person's health or safety.
Smoking cigarettes poses many health hazards.
Imperative. When something is imperative, it is extremely important and must be done.
It was imperative for him to find a job.
Intestines. Intestines are tubes through which food passes after it leaves the stomach.
Whatever you eat goes into your intestines.
Manifest. To manifest means to make something visible or obvious.
The holiday season manifested joy in the children.
Metabolic. When something is metabolic, it relates to a person's or animal's metabolism.
People who have a low metabolic rate will gain weight.
Overcrowded. When a place is overcrowded, it has too many people or things in it.
The lobby was overcrowded with people.
Paramount. When something is paramount, it is more important than anything else.
The safety of passengers must be paramount when designing a car.
Practitioner. A practitioner is a doctor.
She made an appointment with a practitioner to treat her cough.
Provision. The provision of something is the act of giving it to people in need or want.
That department is responsible for the provision of emergency supplies.
Replenish. To replenish something means to make it full or complete again.
We planted nearly 100 seeds to replenish the garden after the fire.
Sterile. When something is sterile, it is completely clean and free from germs.
The hospital room looked quite sterile.
Upgrade. To upgrade something means to improve it or make it more efficient.
He upgraded to a real fancy car.
Viable. When something is viable, it is capable of doing what it is intended to do.
Her method of solving the math problem seemed viable.
Voluntary. When something is voluntary, it is done by choice, but is not required.
Many people attended the voluntary boat safety class.
Epidemic in Zimbabwe. In August of 2008, a deadly cholera epidemic manifested in Zimbabwe. A severe health hazard caused the outbreak. There was an extreme lack of clean drinking water in the overcrowded urban cities. Garbage and chemicals got into the public water supplies and contaminated them. Since people did not have access to other sources, they had to drink the dirty water. The outbreak spread rapidly and infected almost 16,000 people. The illness caused extreme pain in people's intestines. It also caused a deficiency of important fluids in sick people's bodies. Without the proper fluids and minerals, metabolic processes stopped working correctly. People were unable to digest food properly or replenish their lost nutrients. If they had not received viable treatment, they would have been likely to die. It was imperative for help to come soon. However, the government of Zimbabwe was unable to provide help to its people. The government didn't have a plan to stop the spread of cholera. In addition, the country was too poor to get clean water or medication for the sick. The people seemed to be doomed. Luckily, many other countries recognized the paramount need to contain the outbreak. Dozens of voluntary practitioners from Britain, France, the United States, and other countries went to Zimbabwe to treat the disease. Through the provision of sterile drinking water and medication, people finally got the treatment they badly needed. The compassionate doctors were able to save the lives of thousands. By January of 2009, the epidemic was almost completely contained. Today, the Zimbabwean government is working with other countries to prevent future epidemics. They are cleaning up the water supply and learning how to avoid health hazards. The system used to filter water is being upgraded. The government now administers the water supply plants and makes sure that they adhere to strict safety guidelines. Hopefully, future instances of cholera will be treated before they start deadly epidemics.
New words and examples.
Airway. An airway is the passage by which air reaches a person's lungs.
Since he was sick, mucus would occasionally get stuck in his airway.
Almighty. The Almighty is a name for a god in a religion.
Before eating, they thanked the Almighty for their food.
Advent. An advent is the arrival or beginning of an important person, thing, or event.
During the advent of radio, very few programs actually played music.
Constellation. A constellation is a group of stars with a recognizable shape.
That constellation in the shape of a square is named after a flying horse.
Definitive. If something is definitive, then it is the most official.
This library has the definitive collection of books on ancient Egypt.
Equate. To equate one thing with another is to compare them and consider them very similar.
She equated the man's messy appearance with a lack of responsibility.
Inhale. To inhale means to take air or a smell into the lungs.
The camper inhaled the cool and fresh mountain air and felt relaxed.
Invoke. To invoke something is to mention it to support an argument or ask for help.
Before going into battle, the soldier invoked the name of his god for protection.
Lunar. If something is lunar, then it is related to the moon.
During a lunar eclipse, Earth's shadow darkens the moon's surface.
Novelty. A novelty is something that is new, original, or strange.
Ice cream was a novelty for him since he rarely had any.
Outmoded. If something is outmoded, then it is no longer in fashion or use.
Black and white television sets are outmoded.
Personalize. To personalize something means to design it to meet a person's unique needs.
He personalized the woman's exercises to give her a better workout.
Pertain. To pertain to something means to be related or connected to it.
All of the lawyer's questions pertain to events around the night of the crime.
Primal. If something is primal, then it is very basic or related to the origin of something.
Cooking the food over the campfire felt like a primal way of making a meal.
Psychiatric. If something is psychiatric, then it is related to mental illness or its treatment.
The doctor said the patient might have a psychiatric problem.
Psychiatry. Psychiatry is the study and treatment of mental illness.
Studying psychiatry has taught me a lot about mental illness.
Reflex. A reflex is an unconscious action in which a body part responds to an event.
There was a reflex when the doctor hit his knee with a rubber hammer.
Seizure. A seizure is sudden illness in which the body loses control and shakes.
Bright flashing lights can cause seizures in children.
Session. A session is a meeting at a regular time in order to discuss and solve an issue.
Every 3 months, the managers met in a session to discuss regional sales.
Utensil. A utensil is a common tool or container.
It seemed that a fork was the wrong utensil for trying to eat the soup.
Seizures then and now. If a person who lived 200 years ago was treated for a seizure today, they would be surprised by the treatment's novelty. That's because doctors in the 1800s were influenced more by primal medical beliefs than science. Rather than thinking the brain caused seizures, people in the 1800s still thought they were the result of strange forces. They equated seizures with the work of evil spirits. Others felt that the seizures had a cosmic or lunar cause. They believed that the cycles of the moon and constellations could make someone have a seizure. During a session to treat a patient who had seizures, doctors would force the patient to invoke the grace of the Almighty. They thought if the patient did this, then the patient would rid themselves of the evil spirits causing the seizures. The advent of modern psychiatry occurred during the 1800s. At that time, people who suffered from seizures were placed in psychiatric hospitals. They were treated like they were insane. However, none of the outmoded treatments worked. It wasn't until the late 1850s that the causes of seizures were understood. We know today that these causes pertain to the brain. Misfired signals from the brain cause a jerking reflex in the body. These usually occur when someone is very tired. Once the causes of seizures were known, definitive treatments were developed. Today, treatments range from taking pills to having surgery. Treatment is personalized according to the type of seizure the patient has. Even today, some people are unsure about seizures. Their most common mistake is thinking that a person having a seizure will swallow their tongue. They often shove some utensil in the person's mouth. However, this doesn't help. The utensil often blocks the airway and prevents the person from inhaling. Yet most of the public no longer fear people who have seizures. Instead, they can now help and comfort a person if they have a seizure.
New words and examples.
Camouflage. Camouflage is something used to hide people and things.
The green and brown camouflage was best used for hiding in forests and jungles.
Contemplate. To contemplate something means to think about it.
Mark took a moment to contemplate the math problem before solving it.
Contend. To contend with something means to struggle to overcome it.
Stacy had to contend with a learning disability throughout high school.
Cot. A cot is a small portable bed.
At the camp, the boys' cabin was lined with cots.
Enlist. To enlist means to join the military.
In their final year at school, the students were asked to enlist in the military.
Frontier. A frontier is a border between two regions or countries.
A fence was built along the frontier where the river curved.
Handbook. A handbook is an item that gives specific information or instructions.
If you look at the handbook, it will tell you which wires to connect to the TV.
Hesitant. If someone is hesitant, then they are not sure or slow in acting or speaking.
Though he knew the answer, he was hesitant to say it because he might be wrong.
Lush. If something is lush, then it is full of a variety of large, healthy plants.
The lush jungle was filled with plants, trees, and vines.
Marrow. Marrow is the soft substance in the center of bones.
Dissolved marrow is a common ingredient in soups.
Outfit. An outfit is a set of clothes worn together, often for a certain job or event.
Callie's new outfit made her look so glamorous.
Paw. A paw is an animal's foot that has claws or soft bottoms.
The kitten cleaned its paws with its tongue.
Quiver. To quiver means to tremble or shake.
The flame on the candle quivered whenever someone opened or closed a door.
Splendid. If something or someone is splendid, then they are very good.
From his head down to his shoes, his clothes looked splendid.
Stray. To stray means to go in a wrong direction and often become lost.
He found himself lost because he had strayed from the tour group.
Substantial. If something is substantial, then it is of great importance, size, or value.
The bank said that he owed it a substantial amount of money.
Torch. A torch is a stick with one end on fire that can be carried in order to give light.
He grabbed a piece of wood and stuck it in the fire in order to make a torch.
Tract. A tract is a large area of land.
On the other side of the mountains was a long tract of forest.
Vigil. A vigil is a period of watchful attention at night for a specific purpose.
He had a vigil in front of the tomb for 3 days.
Weary. If someone is weary, then they are tired.
Jane was weary after a long day of work. The coward's lesson. Tom was easily frightened. He enlisted in the army because he thought the military would teach him courage. And though he needed courage, he never imagined how he would learn it. During a march across a tract of wilderness near his country's frontier, Tom strayed from his squad. He had stopped to gaze at a splendid view of a lush valley. When he turned around, his squad was gone. He searched for them, but because their outfits had camouflage, he couldn't find them. It was getting dark, and Tom grew weary. All he had was a knife, a boomerang, and his handbook. He made a camp for the night. It was cold and the ground was hard. He wished he had his cot and a blanket. Instead, he made a fire, wrapped himself tightly in his jacket, and fell asleep. A loud noise roused him from his sleep. What was that? He wondered. Then he noticed it. An animal of substantial size had left a print from its paw in the dirt. He sat closer to the fire and looked into the darkness. He imagined a large beast jumping from the gloom and attacking him. He shook so much from fear that it felt like the marrow in his bones quivered. Tom contemplated many different plans. He was hesitant to act. He decided to stay by the fire. But during his vigil, he heard more noises. He couldn't contend with his fear any longer. He knew what he had to do. He made a torch and followed the prints. He heard a twig snap very close ahead, but he bravely went on. Seconds later, he discovered what had scared him. It was only a kangaroo. Tom went back to his camp and slept. In the morning, he found his squad. He had finally learned courage. He learned that he had to confront his fear in order to conquer it.
New words and examples.
Certify. To certify something means to confirm that its results are true.
The photograph on her passport certified that she was indeed Jolene Sawyer.
Collaborate. To collaborate means to work together on something.
When they collaborated, they managed to finish their chores early.
Compile. To compile things means to collect a variety of them into a group.
She compiled a list of people who she wanted to attend her birthday party.
Counteract. To counteract something means to act against it in order to reduce or stop it.
Medicine is supposed to counteract illnesses.
Curb. To curb something means to prevent it from happening or increasing.
She curbed her anger by listening to a relaxing song.
Diagnose. To diagnose someone means to identify the medical condition they have.
Several of the children were diagnosed with the flu.
Enact. To enact something means to make it into a law.
The council enacted a law that would only allow buses to drive downtown.
Federation. A federation is a group of states or businesses working for a common cause.
The United Nations is a federation designed to prevent war, disease, and famine.
Gross. If something is gross, then it is disgusting.
The food was so gross that the dog couldn't eat it without feeling sick.
Humane. If something is humane, then it is good and kind.
Helping build homes for poor people is very humane.
Intolerable. If something is intolerable, then it is so bad that people cannot bear it.
The weather was so intolerable that I had to put on my warmest clothes.
Needy. If someone is needy, they are very poor.
After he lost his job, he became very needy.
Onset. The onset of something unpleasant is the beginning of it.
At the onset of the battle, the enemy wasn't prepared for such a large attack.
Pledge. To pledge means to make a promise to do something.
Her mother pledged that she would find her daughter's lost kitten.
Prohibit. To prohibit something means to not allow it.
She prohibited the students from speaking until their work was done.
Rash. A rash is an infected area of the skin with redness, bumps, itching, or dryness.
The new perfume left a horrible rash on my skin.
Render. To render something means to make it become something else.
His report was rendered unimportant by the release of new information.
Smallpox. Smallpox is a disease that causes tiny bumps on the skin and high fevers.
When she saw the tiny bumps, she thought her son might have smallpox.
Transmit. To transmit something means to pass it from one person or place to another.
The radio tower transmits a signal to all the radios in a 20-kilometer radius.
Vow. To vow means to make a promise to do something.
Before they are allowed to work, all senators must vow to never accept bribes.
The end of smallpox. Smallpox was once the most deadly disease in the world. During the 1800s, more than 20 million people got the disease every year. Of those, nearly half died. At the onset of smallpox, people suffered from high fevers, headaches, vomiting, and aching muscles. Yet the worst symptom of all was an intolerable rash that caused irritation on the entire body. Those who survived the disease were often rendered blind or left with gross scars on their face and body. Today, however, cases of smallpox are very rare due to the work of many countries during the late 1900s. This federation of countries collaborated to completely destroy smallpox. Early in the century, wealthy countries in Europe and North America had developed a substance that made the body immune to smallpox. They had required all their citizens to get this vaccine to counteract the disease. Hence, the people of these countries no longer had to worry about smallpox. However, many of the needy people in poorer parts of the world still suffered from the disease. Their countries could not afford the vaccine nor supply enough doctors to curb the spread of smallpox. In 1950, the wealthier countries of the world vowed to free the world of the disease. They pledged to supply the vaccine to any country that could not afford it. Scientists compiled lists of areas where the disease still thrived. Then doctors diagnosed people who had the disease in these areas. They enacted laws that prohibited people with smallpox from mixing with those who did not. In this way, they could not transmit the disease to others. Then the doctors gave all of them the vaccine. It took a long time and a lot of work, but nearly 30 years later, on December 9, 1979, a group of scientists certified that smallpox had been successfully stopped. The humane efforts of people from all over the world had accomplished a great task.
New words and examples.
Adhesive. An adhesive is a substance used for sticking things together.
The carpenter used an adhesive to hold the two pieces of wood together.
Adverse. If something is adverse, then it is harmful.
Not eating healthy foods can have an adverse effect on your health.
Dependency. A dependency is a strong need for someone or something.
The child still has a dependency on her mother.
Dump. To dump something means to throw it away or get rid of it.
She dumped the garbage into the trash can.
Eternal. If something is eternal, then it lasts forever.
She said that her love for him was eternal.
Fluctuate. To fluctuate means to rise and fall in number or amount.
Prices for gasoline have been fluctuating all month.
Fro. If something moves to and fro, it moves backward and forward or side to side.
Her long hair went to and fro as she swung on the swing.
Inclusion. Inclusion is the act of including someone or something in a group.
Her inclusion into the photo club was well received.
Intermediate. If something is intermediate, then it is in the middle of two levels, places, or times.
He selected the intermediate ski hill to begin his afternoon of skiing.
Intermittent. If something is intermittent, then it happens in a way that is not constant.
It was hard to focus because intermittent noises came from the workers outside.
Mentor. A mentor is a person with experience or knowledge who advises someone.
The students each chose a mentor to help them with the experiment.
Phoenix. A phoenix is an imaginary bird that burns to ashes and is reborn.
Some believe the phoenix is a symbol for rebirth and a new beginning.
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis is the process in which plants change sunlight and air. The chemical in plants that makes them green is used in photosynthesis.
Pollen. Pollen is the tiny yellow powder made in the flowers of plants.
During the spring, the pollen in the air makes some people become sick.
Regain. To regain something means to get it back.
The battery regained its power after being recharged.
Reverse. To reverse means to change to the opposite direction.
They reversed their direction after seeing the sign.
Swarm. A swarm is a group of flying insects.
A beautiful swarm of butterflies filled the summer sky.
Texture. Texture is the quality of something that can be known by its touch.
The texture of her skin was very soft and smooth.
Tickle. To tickle someone is to touch them in a way that causes laughter.
The mother tickled the little boy's foot, and he screamed with laughter.
Vibrant. If something is vibrant, then it is bright and full of color.
Their new shirts were a vibrant shade of red. The greedy bee. A young bee had passed his intermediate level exams. He now knew everything about flowers. He understood how they used photosynthesis to make oxygen, and which ones produced the best pollen. Bees had an important dependency on pollen. From the beginning of time, bees' eternal task was to gather pollen and make honey with it. Since he passed his exams, the little bee had earned his inclusion in the swarms that gathered pollen. He was excited because he was finally allowed to leave the hive. He left with the next swarm and was determined to find the perfect flower. Soon he saw a large, vibrant flower full of pollen. He landed on a petal and walked toward the pollen at the flower's center. Immediately he began rolling in the pollen, gathering it on his legs and wings. The fine texture of the pollen tickled when it stuck to his body. It was the best experience the little bee had ever had. He gathered as much as he could. But when he was flying back home, he realized that all the pollen had an adverse effect. He had no control over his flight. The intermittent wind fluctuated in power. He was blown to and fro. 1 minute he was flying straight, and the next minute the wind had reversed his course. He tried to dump some of the pollen, but it acted as an adhesive. He couldn't get it off. He became tired and fell to the ground. What am I going to do now? He thought. Just then his mentor landed next to him and began cleaning the excess pollen off the little bee. You shouldn't have taken so much, his mentor said. Finally, with the pollen off of him, the bee easily regained his strength, and like a phoenix, the young bee flew back into the air. When he returned to the hive, he turned to his mentor and said, I learned an important lesson today. I will never be greedy again.
New words and examples.
Advocate. To advocate a plan or idea is to support or suggest it in public.
The group advocated increased spending on education and schools.
Authorize. To authorize something means to give permission for it.
The mayor authorized the construction of a new statue in the park.
Civilian. A civilian is someone who is not in the military.
It was Todd's job to keep civilians from entering the army facility.
Commodity. A commodity is something that can be bought or sold.
Fran's uncle made most of his money trading commodities.
Conquest. A conquest is an event by which one country takes over another country.
After the conquest, the people of the small city had no freedom.
Disclose. To disclose something means to tell it to someone else.
John came home late, so he had to disclose his activities to his wife.
Dynamics. The dynamics of a situation are the way that parts of it affect each other.
A good psychologist needs to know a lot about the dynamics of brain disorders.
Enroll. To enroll in something is to put one's name on a list as a member of a group.
The students had to enroll in a class one semester in advance.
Envious. When someone is envious, they want something that another person has.
They were envious of their neighbor's front yard.
Euphoria. Euphoria is a feeling of extreme happiness.
The athlete felt euphoria after he won the important game.
Festive. When something is festive, it is happy and related to a party or celebration.
Dean's favorite part of Christmas is the festive clothing that people wear.
Jolly. When someone is jolly, they are cheerful and happy.
My grandmother's jolly attitude always made me smile.
Lentil. Lentils are very small beans that people cook and eat.
Danny made her special soup with lentils when her husband was sick.
Marshal. To marshal a group means to assemble them in order.
The students were marshaled outside and put into groups.
Morale. Morale is the amount of hope that people have during a difficult situation.
To improve our family's morale, Mom suggested going on a picnic.
Prophecy. A prophecy is a prediction about what will happen in the future.
Some people believe that prophecies are actually true.
Sage. A sage is someone who is very wise.
Hal always visited the local sage for help with love.
Senate. A senate is a part of the government in some countries.
Everybody liked Caroline and chose her to speak for them in the Senate.
Sentiment. A sentiment is an opinion based on your feelings.
Tess told everyone at the table her sentiments about eating meat.
Unrest. Unrest is a state of anger about something among the people in a place.
High taxes caused much of the unrest that led to the Revolutionary War.
The Lydian King. King Croesus was once one of the richest kings in the world. He ruled over Lydia, an ancient empire located near modern-day Turkey, and controlled a valuable commodity, gold. Many people were very envious of him. One day a messenger disclosed some interesting news. Political unrest in Persia had weakened the empire. Before then, the Persians had taken over many countries. Many leaders were scared of the Persian conquest. But King Croesus understood the dynamics of war better than most. He decided that it would be a good time to try to beat the Persians while they were weak. He advocated starting war, but nobody shared his sentiment. Then he asked a wise member of the Senate who was visiting from Athens. The sage didn't say whether he should attack the Persians or not. He only warned him that his good luck wouldn't last. Finally, King Croesus sent a messenger to visit the oracle, a special lady who could see the future. The messenger gave the oracle jugs of wine and baskets of lentils in order to make her happy. When the messenger came back, he was in a festive mood. "What was the oracle's prophecy?" asked King Croesus. The jolly messenger responded, "She said that if you attack Persia, you will destroy a great empire." The news filled Croesus with euphoria. After hearing the oracle's prophecy, many civilians enrolled in the Lydian army. The king marshaled his troops and prepared them for a war with Persia. Their morale was high because they were sure they would win. Soon King Croesus authorized an attack against the Persians. However, the Persian army was still very strong. After a few months of fighting, it was obvious that the oracle's prophecy had come true. By attacking the Persians, King Croesus had destroyed a great empire. His own. King Croesus should have considered the advice more carefully.
New words and examples.
Beforehand. If something is done beforehand, then it is done in advance.
He packed his luggage beforehand so he was able to leave right away.
Centigrade. If a temperature is centigrade, it is scaled so water freezes at 0 degrees and boils at 100 degrees.
During the springtime, the temperature gets as warm as 26 degrees centigrade.
Chatter. To chatter means to talk quickly about unimportant things.
The children chattered in the back of the classroom.
Concerto. A concerto is music for a solo instrument and played with an orchestra.
The piano concerto has a section in which only the piano plays.
Condense. To condense a gas means to make it a liquid.
The cool air made tiny drops of water condense on the tops of the grass.
Cove. A cove is a part of land where it curves inward around the sea.
They hid the boat in a small cove on the south side of the island.
Deteriorate. To deteriorate means to become steadily worse.
The nation's economy continued to deteriorate despite the politicians' efforts.
Exterior. An exterior is the outside surface of something.
The exterior of the nut was hard and woody, but the inside was soft and delicious.
Freeway. A freeway is a road with no stops where cars travel at high speeds.
Once you get on the freeway, it only takes an hour to drive to my parents' farm.
Hearty. If someone or something is hearty, then they are loud and happy.
The grandmother ended her story with a hearty laugh that pleased her grandchild.
Hospitable. If someone is hospitable, they are friendly to strangers.
At dinner, Dad was very hospitable to my friends.
Manor. A manor is a large house with many rooms.
The manor had over 40 rooms in addition to beautiful gardens.
Monastery. A monastery is a building in which monks live.
The monks at this monastery are famous for their bread and music.
Nursery. A nursery is a room where babies and children sleep, play, or are cared for.
The children kissed their parents goodnight and went upstairs to the nursery.
Outstretched. If something is outstretched, then it is extended to its full length.
The cat stood on its back legs with its front legs outstretched.
Parcel. A parcel is a package of things to be carried or mailed somewhere.
The parcel looked like it had been stepped on by someone.
Profile. A profile is an outline of a face, usually as seen from the side.
The drawing of Olivia's profile came out very well.
Vivacious. If someone is vivacious, they are talkative and cheerful.
Everyone at the party was very vivacious and having a good time.
Winding. If something is winding, then it follows a twisting course.
The winding river turned and looped around the bases of the hills.
Zip. To zip something means to close it with a zipper.
She zipped her backpack closed after putting her books inside it. The nurse's lesson. One of the children in the nursery was sick. The child's mother, who was usually quite vivacious and chattered constantly, was quiet and worried. She knew that if she did not act quickly, the child's condition would deteriorate. She summoned the children's nurse and said to her, "The monks make a medicine that can cure my child's sickness. Please, hurry tonight to the monastery and get it." The nurse immediately hurried from the manor to get the medicine. The monastery was far away by Rabbit Cove, and there was no freeway leading to it. The only way there was to walk along a dark and winding trail. The temperature was close to 0 degrees centigrade, and it was raining. Luckily, the nurse had grabbed her raincoat beforehand. She zipped it up and pulled the hood over her head. "I'll never make it there," she thought. "Perhaps I should return and go in the morning." But she remembered the sick child and decided to continue. Finally, she arrived at the monastery. It was very late. She feared the monks would not be hospitable. But she approached the door and knocked anyway. The rain had condensed on the exterior of the windows by the door. All she could see was the profile of a large man coming to answer the door. Again, she was filled with fear. But the monk smiled at her when he opened the door. He took her outstretched hand and welcomed her with a hearty voice. The place was warm, and she heard a concerto playing in another room. She relaxed. "How can I help you?" the monk asked, and the nurse explained the situation. He instantly knew what to do. He grabbed a parcel of medicine and took her back to the manor in a carriage. The medicine worked. The nurse was happy she had persevered through the bad weather and found the monastery. Now the boy would be able to live a long natural life.
New words and examples.
Accelerate. To accelerate means to increase in speed.
When he stepped on the gas pedal, the motorcycle accelerated.
Anew. If you do something anew, you do it again and in a different way.
Though he had failed his driving test, he decided to try it anew.
Defect. A defect is a part of something that is wrong or missing.
All these bottles have a defect and must be sent back to the warehouse.
Dreary. If something is dreary, then it is dull, dark, and lifeless.
After the fire, this section of forest is rather dreary.
Duplicate. To duplicate something means to copy it.
She duplicated her friend's movements like she was in front of a mirror.
Electromagnetic. If something is electromagnetic, it is related to electricity and magnetic fields.
Different colors of light come from different levels of electromagnetic energy.
Electron. An electron is a particle in all atoms that has a negative electric charge.
The number of electrons in an atom determines the substance the atoms make.
Glide. To glide means to fly on extended wings with little or no effort.
When the wind is blowing, birds can glide easily through the sky.
Ingenious. If someone is ingenious, then they are very smart.
Charles was the only person ingenious enough to repair the plane's engines.
Innovation. An innovation is a product or idea that is new or very original.
Mrs. Johnson made a great innovation to the company's business plan.
Innovative. If something or someone is innovative, they can think in creative ways.
Since Peter was so innovative, he was chosen to lead the science team.
Launch. To launch something means to make it go into motion.
The boat launched from the dock and floated down the river.
Meteorological. If something is meteorological, it is concerned with the science of weather.
The thunderstorm was so large that it became a great meteorological event.
Meteorology. Meteorology is the science that studies the weather.
In order to understand the weather, you have to study meteorology.
Penetrate. To penetrate something means to enter into it.
The knife easily penetrated the surface of the orange.
Propulsion. Propulsion is the force that moves something forward.
The propulsion lifted the rocket into the sky.
Simulate. To simulate something means to copy its actions or characteristics.
The French language teacher could simulate the accent of a French citizen.
Spur. To spur someone means to urge them into action.
The coach's speech spurred her team into playing the best game of their lives.
Stimulate. To stimulate something means to cause or to increase activity in it.
Doctors sometimes use electric shock to stimulate a patient's heartbeat.
Tenacious. If someone is tenacious, then they do not easily give up.
I'm sure that he'll finish that difficult sale. He is very tenacious.
The tenacious inventor. A young student of meteorology was having a difficult time with an experiment. He was attempting to duplicate lightning in clouds. He had made a device that could simulate lightning. It worked by releasing an electromagnetic pulse into the cloud. This pulse in turn stimulated the electrons in the cloud's particles. Then the electrons produced lightning. But his meteorological experiment had a major defect. He couldn't get the device into the sky. He had tied it to balloons, but they had burst. He had shot the device from a cannon, but the force of the cannon had damaged it. You should give up, his friends told him. You'll never get that thing into the air. But his friends' criticisms only spurred him to try again. The student was very innovative, and at last he thought that he had an innovation that would work. He attached wings to the device, and on one dreary day, when clouds blocked the light of the sun, he started his experiment anew. He placed the device on a rocket and launched it into the sky. The propulsion of the rocket carried the device high into the air. The rocket accelerated into the clouds and then released the device. It glided on its wings through the clouds, and when it penetrated the center of a large black cloud, it emitted the electromagnetic pulse. And just as he had predicted, lightning shot from the cloud. He called his professors, and the next day they came to watch. He successfully duplicated the experiment. His teachers were extremely impressed and called the student and his invention ingenious. The student was given many awards and became a famous inventor. He had not given up. He had remained tenacious and succeeded.